Welcome to the Strap and Link podcast, where we cover brands from their inception to their latest release.
It's the Montress Tudor.
Like I said, better movement, spring drive
So,
potentially, Rolex Oyster Perpetual.
There's Super Ocean here. Now you see this kind of renaissance of Tudor. Finally, in 2016, they achieved the spring drive with an 8-day power. The podcast for watch lovers by watch lovers. New episodes every first and third Monday of the month.
Welcome back to the Strap and Link podcast. What's up? Back here again with your host, Brett and David. How's it going, man?
Hey. Another exciting podcast. I think this will be another good episode that a lot of people have requested. So we're very excited to kind of get into it and give our takes, even though this is another watch that, we haven't been super familiar with until probably, 6 months ago. We've always known about them, but really done deep dives lately. I think we have some good insights, and this is probably one of the watches that most of our listeners might even know more than us. So definitely give us some feedback on what you think on our social medias.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We don't have a lot of hands-on experience with Seiko, but it was super fun to research it. I learned a lot, and I appreciate this brand a lot more after doing the history research. We're going to get into that. We've got a lot to get into today, so we don't want to spend too much time kind of chit-chatting, but I do want to let everyone know, also let you know, David, this is episode 15, so we've gotten through 10. Did some of our favorite brands, a lot of brands that we own, we have hands-on experience with. We did the biggest, we did Rolex. I want to say thanks to all of you who I assume shared the show with a friend. Listener response was huge. I know that in part also has to do with the fact that we talked about Rolex. But again, we just want to say thanks. Our first episode released in mid-February. So we've done, like I said, 14. We've done the big one. We did Rolex. We've had some guests on the show. We've covered brands. Obviously, we've covered events. Learned a lot about our listeners. We just dug into that the other day. We see you in the UK, in London, West Midlands, in the Northwest. I don't even know where these places are, man, but I can't wait to go there now. Obviously at home. What up, New York? Cali, Texas, we see you. Obviously, Georgia. So we appreciate you for rocking with us. My favorite place, the Netherlands. I think there's 4 or 5 of you in North Holland.
That's right. That's Brett's second home.
Yeah, man. I'll be in there in October. So if any listeners are listening to this, hit me up. Let's go grab a Heineken or some other things. What have you learned so far? We've done 15 episodes. We've done a lot of history research. We've gotten to loan and try some new watches. We've been to several meets, obviously. So what have you learned throughout 15 episodes about watches or podcasting, social media?
Yeah, honestly, the biggest thing to me that I don't know if it surprised me, but I guess it did, was everybody's love for the history of a lot of these watches, because I guess there's really was a void for a history podcast on watches, just kind of going back and how these brands started and what happened to get them to the point where they are today. And again, we went through Rolex, we went through Omega, which has a deep, rich history. Those are probably my 2 favorite history episodes we did. But we also covered, smaller brands. We also covered Grand Seiko, Breitling, all these other big names that, they all have very rich history. Tissot, even, and the feedback for that has been really well. I think when we started, we were like, hey, we're going to start with this format and then kind of vary from there, expecting that, we'll have a lot of, hey, we, great, but we'd rather you do this more. But really, since we started, it's pretty much been the same format. Everybody likes it. They love the history portions. They like picking out a few different watches or a few different collections and going in through it. And, we obviously have had a couple interview podcasts that I think is a good breakup from the monotony of the same format. But it's really been surprising me that a lot of these people like exactly what we're doing when it comes to talk about, hey, for 30 minutes or so about the history and really deep dive into that. And I guess to me, it, like I said, is really just because there is a void in the market out there for these deep history. If there's another watch podcast out there, a lot of times it's just conversation about just their opinions, and really that's it. So that was probably the biggest learning curve I had to learn over the last few months.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. The response to history has been huge, a lot more than what we thought. I thought once we got some guests on, especially when we had Mike and Justin from Monta, and then You know, I mean, Miguel at SoCal, like he's got a pretty big channel. So I thought, you know, we get a few guests on and people were going to like that conversational Joe
Mm-hmm.
Rogan style, I think is how I dubbed it back when we were talking about that. But yeah, I mean, the response has been very straightforward. People like the history. So so we're going to keep doing that. We're going to do that again today with Seiko History. We've got a lot to cover there, but really quickly before we jump into that, we want to do mailbag piece of news that we also want to cover. And just quick reminder, if you don't already, head over to Instagram, give us a follow at Strap and Link. Also, again, just one last time, just want to say a huge thanks to all the listens and all the new listeners and all the people that shared the episode and the show for the Rolex episode. Response was huge. So again, just one last thank you. And then finally, don't forget, Strap and Link listeners, you also get 15% off watch straps at straphabit.com. You can also follow them on Instagram as well. So with all that out of the way and everything, let's jump into our first mailbag question. I forget who this came from. Let me hold on one second. I want to pull this up. I've got it right here. I forgot to type in who actually submitted this. All right. So, how is the quality of Seiko watches compared to other entry level Swiss brands such as Tissot? This is coming from Ali Climbs.
Yeah, very good
Yeah,
question.
halfway across the world too. So this person reached out to us, let us know. Yeah, they are in the Middle East and a huge fan. So shout out to Ali there. I can kick it off. I mean, I have no idea. Like David said earlier, we don't really have hands-on experience with Seiko. I've never owned one. I think after doing this podcast, and doing the research, I think that I will at some point, at some stage. From what I know and from the people that I know that do own one, the quality is more than enough. I think it's more than justified. People love their Seikos. Most people that have one that I know, they own multiple. A lot of people, this was their first watch or their first brand. It's kind of, you know, we talked about that on the Tissot episode, but I think Seiko is probably potentially even more so positioned as that first one. It's just, you know, they're just cheaper. You can get automatic watches for half the cost of a Tissot automatic. So
Yeah.
people do love them. They've got a lot. So once we finish the episode today, I think that you'll have an idea of the quality that you could expect, but I'm not going to go much further because again, I don't have the hands-on experience yet.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with that. To me, I think the quality on the majority of their stuff definitely will hold up to, Tissot or any of those Swiss brands. I mean, it's like anything, and probably the same thing with Grand Seiko with holding value. It's just the stigma of a Swiss watch versus anywhere else.
Yeah.
And but I think when it comes down to just pure quality, I think it'll hold up, especially with their nicer end stuff that they option
Oh, yeah.
out. Their nicer stuff's gonna be nicer than Tissot or a lot of the other brands out there, but I think even their mid to lower level, you'll get what you pay for, in the sense of, hey, this watch is gonna work for the
Yeah.
next 5 years. It's not gonna break down like some of your other very cheap watches would, that are still crazily in around the same price point. I mean, you can buy a movement watch, MVMT watch is $100 to $200, and you can buy a Seiko $200 watch, and I promise you that Seiko is going to outlast that MVMT watch by 20 years. So again, that's the good thing about these watches, and same thing with Tissot and all. You don't have to worry about, hey, for some reason my watch is a quartz, but it dies every 6 months for some reason.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that. I mean, I even owned an MVMT watch a while ago, and it just broke after a year. I just quit working. I put in a new battery, it would never work again. You don't have to worry about that type of stuff with these watches. And to me, I think for your initial watch, that's what you want. Is something you'll want to probably have and know works for the next 20 years. So as you keep growing your watch collection, if this is something you care about, you can look back and say, hey, my first watch is still working, and I could wear it if I wanted to, just to feel the nostalgic of it,
Yeah.
which I think's overlooked in a lot of people when it comes to their watch collecting. Because once they get past that first watch, they start buying a bunch of new stuff, and they forget about their watch for years. But then 5 years down the road, they're like, man, I really wish I had that first ever watch, just to wear around the house, or wear some small places, just to
Yeah.
feel that nostalgia. So you don't have to worry about that with Seiko, definitely, which is nice.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, that's a good call out. I mean, hadn't thought about that, but yeah, I'm sure that there are I mean, let's just call it what it is. I mean, just cheap, internet-born watch companies that have been around for 5 or 7 years that
Hmm.
outsource all their parts, and then just complete cheapness. And
Yeah.
for an extra $100, you can get a Seiko. So, um, so why not do it? Let's go ahead and jump into the news. There's a big piece of news that I wanted to touch on, and then we are going to jump into the history and the founding of Seiko. So Rolex bought Bucher. Um, I think we should touch on this and what it means. We just finished our Rolex episode, so unfortunately we weren't able to get this in. This was a end of August acquisition of Bucher, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. So I've read a lot of opinions and a lot of pieces of information and news and articles and press and all that good stuff. So let's just start off for those who don't know what Bucher is. They are an authorized dealer of many luxury watch brands, including Rolex, including Tudor, Omega, all kinds of stuff. If you're like a Teddy Baldassar / Kevin O'Leary fan, they have, I think, like multiple videos on their respective pages of them doing like watch collection builds at the Bucher store in New York City. If you haven't seen that, like, I don't like to plug a lot of other people's stuff that aren't helping us out, but it's very cool to see just what all that they include. So go check that out if you haven't already, and if you're unfamiliar with Bucher. But um, they also play probably with a client list that's a little bit more exclusive than most of our local ADs that we all go to. The obvious impact here to me is that Rolex now has access to the Bucher distribution network and all of those retail stores. But they also get access to their what they call VICs, or very important clients, VICs. The data that's associated with that is huge. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last 15 or 20 years, you all know that data is humongous. When I first went to Europe about a year ago, I noticed any website you go to, you have to accept cookies. When I got back from Europe, I noticed that American websites had just started that. So this is like early 2023. I mean, your data is being collected everywhere. It's being shared. It's being sold. So that's huge. And then I think finally, an opinion that I read, where Rolex can now control more of that retail experience. In the past, it sort of depended on the AD that you went to see and just kind of what that experience was like for you. Now Rolex, they've got access to the customer data. They control that retail experience. That means pre-sales, understanding the client, the data, the purchase history, post-sales, servicing and support, all of that. That's possibly the biggest impact to me, because before this purchase, the only retail location that Rolex managed was in Geneva, down the street from their headquarters. So I think that all of those points, along with the pre-owned program, I forget what I think CPO or something like that,
Yeah, certified
pre-owned.
pre-owned.
Yeah, I think that'll be huge for Rolex. So we'll see if it leads to any more kind of market games or anything like that. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that there's a Bucher in or around Atlanta. I've never been to one. I've never even seen one. I don't think. I imagine they're in bigger. I mean, Atlanta's a big city, but yeah, I've just never seen one. So, what are your kind of initial thoughts and reactions to that?
You about covered the whole dang thing. That was, I mean, that's pretty much what I was thinking too. Very interesting. I think let's just sit back and look back at this 6 months from now and see if it changes anything, or if it does, what the big takeaways are. Having more control by Rolex, I think, either a great thing, or it'll end up being well, they dropped that ball. Because
Okay.
there's so much, with everything they're doing right now. Everybody's expecting, they're building that new factory. I believe I'm sure still the same far out as it was a year ago, but everybody's kind of looking at Rolex like, okay, guys, you got to, let's pivot, let's do something here to help the fan base. And I guess this is something that could help, but again, we're just gonna have to sit back and watch and wait, see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good assessment. We can all wait a few months, 6, 9, 12 months, give them a few quarters to just see what this is going to look like. But I will be very interested to go visit a Bucher location.
Hmm.
Like you said, maybe a few months down the road, once they've kind of gotten their bearings under them. I think that'd be a fun experience to do. Probably not going to be buying a new Rolex, but fun nonetheless. They do
Are
have a
they
full
going to
bar.
still allow those shops to sell other brands, or is it just gonna be Rolex now?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was figured they would, but then
Yeah, I
you
mean, I
they're just
read
gonna take
that.
some of the profit share, I guess.
Well, so I read that of all of Bucher's revenue streams, that Rolex make about 5% of it, which is pretty
Okay.
huge. It doesn't sound like a big number. 5% is a small percentage, but that's one brand, and like I said, they carry like 30 something brands.
Yeah. That's why
So
I figured they had to still keep. They're just
yeah,
now gonna make a cut from everything, which
yeah,
is good.
and let's all remember, right? We just came off the Rolex episode. You can't just walk in and go buy a Rolex. So the idea that you have to wait like 6 or 12 or 18 months to get
Mhm.
one of these, and it's still pumping out 5% of the total revenue. I mean, Rolex is going to make a killing with
Mhm.
this. I mean, yeah, the other brands, the Tudors and the Omegas, those mid-range brands like Breitling, even actually, yeah, they are. They do sell Breitling. Those are
Mhm.
going to be the brands that make all the money for them, I think. I think this is more of a Rolex retail play. I just think that
Yeah.
this was the way for them to get into the retail game. This was a way for them to buy a chain of retailers and distributors so that they can control that. So, um, I mean, I don't think it's going to make it worse at all. I think it'll just make it
Mhm.
better. Rolex, they're not gonna, they can't sabotage any of those other brands, because like I said,
Yeah.
unless they just start pumping out more, an extra million watches a year, they
And
would go flat
that's the
broke.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like it can't be worse, but let's just see how much better it's actually going to be, or is
yeah,
it going to be such a change where you don't even notice it? That's
yeah,
what scares me. Is like, okay, great, you did this thing. Let's ride the hype for 3 months, but this time next year, have we noticed a difference? Is
right,
there any difference out there in the market from what
right,
they did? But
yep,
I'm sure there will be to their checkbook to them, but for the consumer, will there be a noticeable difference?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
big thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I mean, in 6 9 months, I mean, yeah, you and I should, like I said, I mean, there might be one in Atlanta, but yeah, we should just plan a trip and just kind of go in there and see what that's like. I mean,
Hmm.
the Teddy and Kevin episode, I mean, there's like a full bar with like liquor and everything. I mean, it's kind of like an experience. So
Yeah.
even to just kind of go in and just window shop a little bit, I think would be fun. But I think you could also probably get some cool questions asked and answered by one of those people now
Yeah.
that Rolex is putting probably some of their own people in those stores. So
Yeah. All right.
awesome.
Well, let's get on to history, guys. I know you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, we'll kick off history of the Seiko Watch Company here. So 1881, Kintaro Hattori laid the cornerstone of what eventually would become the Seiko, or what would become Seiko watches, by establishing the K Hattori Watch and Jewelry Shop in Tokyo. He was 21 years old, so pretty cool. I think I graduated college the day after I turned 22. So this guy was setting up a watch repair shop. He had already learned all that, so pretty cool. About a decade later, in 1892, that shop transitioned into making clocks under the name Seikosha. So in Japanese, the name Seiko means exquisite or minute or success. I guess there's couple of different meanings there. And Sha means house. So roughly this translated into the house of exquisite timepieces. Pretty neat. In 1895, we saw the debut of Seikosha's first pocket watch, which was aptly named the Timekeeper. This was to me, a pretty good looking pocket watch. You got small seconds at the 6 o'clock position, minute track on the outside. Somewhat standard, but clean, symmetrical dial. Very good
Hmm.
looking watch. In 1913, the Laurel was introduced, and this was actually the first ever wristwatch produced in the Japanese market, not just by Seiko, but the first ever wristwatch produced in the Japanese domestic market, produced by Seiko. At this time, pocket watches were still very heavily favored. Probably true around the world, also not just in Japan at this time, but I know that around this time, the 1900s, 10s, and 20s, that's when that shift, probably within that 20-year range from doing our research and past episodes, that's kind of where we've learned and we've seen these companies evolve from making pocket watches into wristwatches. So
Hmm.
again, that's 1913 when the Laurel was introduced. Another really good looking watch, kind of similar to the Longines Master Collection, if anyone's familiar with that, with kind of the numerals that they use and just kind of the dial layout. Again, small seconds at the 6 o'clock. In the 1920s, Seiko transforms into the Seiko Corporation as a result of a merger between Seiko and Daney Seiko Company Limited. I failed to research what that company did or does. Nonetheless, though, this solidified the name Seiko for decades to come. And then finally, for me, in 1929, Seiko Pocket Watch was designed as the National Railway's official watch. So still making pocket watches even 15 or so years later. So Seiko, as we can see at this point, they've made a ton of success simply by being the first to do it in Japan. And that'll be a recurring theme as we kind of go on throughout the history.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've noticed a lot. They're so big because they were the first one to really replicate a lot of the cool things that were going on in Europe and bring it into their market. And it's probably why they still hold the empire over there. So
Yeah.
in the midst of the 20th century, innovation became Seiko's hallmark. In 1956, they unveiled their first automatic movement, the Seiko Automatic, showcasing their mastery over mechanical timekeeping. In the same year, they also released the Dial Shock, which is a device used to protect the watch's most vulnerable parts to shock caused by the day-to-day activities in life. However, it was the grand unveiling, of course, the great Grand Seiko in 1960 that set a new standard for luxury watches in their market, embodying precision, elegance, and relentless pursuit to perfection. To quote the Seiko website, a small team of Seiko's most experienced and skilled watchmakers were tasked with making the very best watch of which they were capable at the time. Grand Seiko was also meant to represent the pinnacle of Seiko's excellence in watchmaking and to deliver a more accurate and durable timepiece than any other Seiko on the market at the time. The dawn of the 1960s brought in with it a series of breakthroughs. In 1964, Seiko's role as the official timekeeper of the Tokyo Olympic Games highlighted their timekeeping prowess on the global stage. The launch of the Astron in 1969 sparked the quartz revolution, redefining the very concept of accuracy of timekeeping, which obviously everybody knows quartz still to this day is one of the most, if not the most accurate way of keeping time. This period also brought the birth of iconic timepieces like the Quartz Diver and the world's first quartz analog chronograph, which obviously are still today what Seiko is pretty much known for, is their really cool looking Quartz Diver watches.
Yeah.
In 1965, Seiko released their first ever Japan-produced dive watch, waterproof to 150 meters and designed for a team of exploration divers off the coast of Japan. In 1969, they released the first chronograph with the Magic Level, which is a column wheel with a vertical clutch. We also discussed this on the Omega episode when we discussed their coaxial movement.
Yeah, exactly. And a cool note about that dive team, the exploration dive team, they brought, well, actually, you know what? I think I'm going to get into that in just a moment. So I'm going to save that. In 1973, Seiko released the world's first LCD display digital watch. To me, this is kind of where, we get into like the vintage Seiko collector stuff that I personally am not really into. Digital watches, like LCD display. Like I know Hamilton did some of that. Like they have a very cool LCD display that I'm sure we'll talk about once we do that episode. But again, it's not really something that I'm a fan of, but I can appreciate it, right? I mean, it's history and it's part of it. Seiko did a lot of firsts. And so, again, still very much appreciate that they looked for the new thing and they achieved it like all over the place. They did a lot of Japan first and a lot of world first. So 2 years after this LCD digital watch is produced, the world's first dive watch made of titanium. The world's first. People, come on, it's Seiko. I mean, like no bullshit. They did a lot of cool stuff. This titanium diver was rated to 600 meters. It took Seiko 7 years after receiving a letter from a dive team. This is what I was about to say. They got a letter from a dive team, basically just explaining how at those depths these watches just get so beat up. They just get so. I mean, I don't know physically exactly what happens to them, but that was kind of the message that was sent to Seiko. Seiko took it. 7 years later, they said, here is a titanium diver rated to 600 meters. Again, producing another world's first. And many of these watches throughout the 60s and 70s, their design language is completely evident. A lot of the current collections that are available today, they take a lot of cues from those watches, similar to how we talked about that on Grand Seiko, where you can see that design language from 4 or 5 decades ago is still evident today. So from the early 70s until the late 90s, they continued to make some pretty unique watches, which included a digital diver, a voice recorder, and TV watch. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, you could watch TV via a connected computer-looking thing. We're getting very into like Asian technology here, people. Yeah, very cool
Very
stuff.
cool, different. Yeah.
Yeah, they also served as the official timekeeper of various sporting events. I know David mentioned the Tokyo Olympic Games,
Yeah.
but they did a lot of, mainly in the Eastern Hemisphere, Asian sort of international hosted games. Seiko was the official timekeeper for many, many of those.
Yeah.
After decades of commitment to things such as quartz movements and the first automatic movement, we are finally presented everybody with the spring drive in 1999. We've talked about spring drive technology on our very first episode, which was Grand Seiko.
Yeah.
So be sure to check that out if you haven't already. But for those who don't know why a spring drive is so cool, in very simple layman's terms, it uses a combination of a quartz and mechanical movements that work together to deliver pretty much the most accurate watch on the market. Um,
Accuracy and perfect glide.
Yes. In Seiko's terms, they refer to spring drive as, let me see if I can remember the exact phrasing, the continuous motion of time, I believe.
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
refer to it that way because, like David said, there is no tick. Even on a Rolex, if your eyes are as good as mine, you can spot a tick. When you start looking at some of these Seikos that beat at 3 and 4 hertz, you can definitely notice a tick. A spring glide looks effortless. It looks like it never stops moving. So very cool technology there.
Yeah.
So even today, as you can go onto their website today, people, and this blew my mind, you can purchase a Seiko, not a Grand Seiko, a Seiko with spring drive. It'll set you back $6,300 US, but you can do that. So I think that's pretty awesome. Um, Fast forward a little bit, in 2007, the very first spring drive chronograph was produced. Again, all of this by Seiko. So don't think that we're talking about Grand Seiko and merging two brands here. This is all still being developed and driven by Seiko. In 2010, very cool to me, they produced a spring drive specifically designed for a spacewalk. So Omega, step aside. Seiko brought a spring drive to space, and it worked perfectly. It also won awards at the Horology Grand Prix of Geneva, or the Grand Prix de Horologie de Geneva, I believe. Just butchered that. Who cares?
Perfect.
Yes. The GPS solar technology introduced in 2012 demonstrated their dedication to unrivaled precision by receiving time signals from satellites. They
Hmm.
did all kinds of crazy, crazy stuff. To wrap up my portion of history here, in 2014, the High Beat GMT, which today we associate with special editions, such as the one that I have and I'm wearing right now, dubbed the Bamboo, won the Petite Aiguille spell check Petite Aiguille prize at the GPHG, which I believe is the Grand Prix of Geneva, Grand Prix Horology de Geneva. I note this win because in order to win this award, the manufacturer must have submitted a watch at or less than roughly 9,000 US, and it was selected as offering basically much more than the cost would suggest. So this was before Seiko and Grand Seiko split to begin operating as separate entities, and that's why I include this in the Seiko history rather than in our Grand Seiko episode in history, because this was a Seiko watch. This was when Seiko was still branded at the top, Grand Seiko branded at the bottom. And if you're familiar with the Bamboo, this watch looked almost identical. The case shape was a
Hmm.
little less drastic. It was a little more mass appealing, but still generally shaped the same way. And the vertical striations on the dial were not there. It was a kind of a deeper, but it was a flat green dial.
Yeah.
So basically, again, the same watch without some of the textured dial that is kind of synonymous with Grand Seiko today. And then finally, in 2016, Seiko, yes, not Grand Seiko, but Seiko produced their first tourbillon movement. Seiko people produced a tourbillon in 2016 that was used in the Crador watch brand. I've never heard of Crador. If anyone has, let us know about it.
Yeah, this is kind of why at the beginning I brought up about their, more expensive pieces that are, going to be in the thousands, or they blow Tissot and, Bulova and watch brands like that almost out of the water with this type
Yeah.
of innovation. And I mean, that's just the Asian culture. I feel like, Japan is known for innovating and doing some crazy stuff that maybe even, Americans, people in the Western hemisphere don't, aren't really privy to, but normally they'll end up still catching up and getting on board as the years go on. So, I mean,
Yeah.
Seiko is still a forefront of this type of innovation when it comes to these watches at a fairly good price point. And because, I mean, imagine if half of this stuff was in, Swiss brand watches, you're going to be
Oh yeah.
talking almost doubling the prices just because they can,
Yeah.
which is not because of any other reason, which there's your capitalism, baby. um, but as the 21st century unfolded, Seiko's legacy continued to flourish. The Seiko 5 Sports Collection in 2019 breathed new life into the classic line, blending contemporary designs with their enduring utility. Notably, the Prospex LX line in 2020 underlines Seiko's dedication to durability and precision, catering to sports and adventure enthusiasts alike. Celebrating the 140th anniversary in 2016, Seiko stands as a testament to the pursuit of excellence, innovation, and timeless watchmaking for years in the past. For the inaugural pocket watch to cutting edge technology marvels, Seiko's journey exemplifies a legacy of marked by passion, innovation, and unyielding commitment to crafting timepieces that transcend eras throughout all different generations.
Yeah. They have a little bit of something for everybody, and
Hmm.
that's why I wanted to put that mailbag question at the top. Again, that was how is the quality of Seiko compared to other entry level Swiss brands like Tissot. I think we've kind of just covered it. You can
Yeah.
have a $300 automatic by Seiko. You can probably get $150 or $100 quartz from Seiko, and you can get a $6,300 spring drive from Seiko. So I think it's a
Yeah.
matter of how much do you want to spend, and
Yeah.
I think if you're comparing things like movement and accuracy and COSC certification and dive resistance, all that stuff, you can find your comparison.
Well, let me ask you this,
Yeah,
Brett. How much do you think it really hurts Seiko to have such a vast variation in quality of watches? Meaning, like, Seiko is known for, $200 watches, but they also present these more expensive watches, and that's not even Grand Seiko. That's just
yeah,
Seiko. They'll present these much nicer watches, and you know how it always is. Like if you do something, not I don't want to say cheaply, but just on the less expensive side, a lot of that's probably more of those watches out there than their crazier watches. So they're building the brand recognition of, hey, these are, two, three, four, $500 watches, which makes them throw into that line of, Bulova or,
yeah,
I don't want to say Citizen because Citizen does kind of like Seiko. They're very nice watches as well. But, Tissot even, they're known for their $500 to $1,000 watch max watches,
yeah.
where Seiko is, probably more known for that, but they also do so much more.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a problem or that it hurts Seiko. The reason for that is because I think that the majority of people are drawn to the cheaper Seikos, to the more entry
Hmm.
model Seikos.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier. Similar to Tissot, this could be very well could be your first
Hmm.
watch brand. And we also said that a lot of people that own Seikos, they own multiple Seikos.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that the people who are getting a Seiko for a first watch, whether it's like a gift from your father or passed down to you, or
Hmm.
it's just you're really into watches and that's all that you could afford because you're in like high school and you saved up from cutting
Yeah.
grass for a couple months and now you've got 300 or 400 bucks in hand and you're going to run that to the mall and buy a Seiko. I don't
Hmm.
think that those buyers are the same buyers that are going to buy some of the more expensive Seiko stuff necessarily. I think a lot of those people might look at Grand Seiko,
Yeah.
but the reason ultimately that I don't think it hurts them is because if you can appreciate watches, and I think that you and I both can, we all know that you hold brands in a little bit higher regard when certain elements are there, like finer finishings and more refinement, and there is a cost associated with them, right? Rolex is a
Yeah.
very hard brand to get into, and it's I
Hmm.
mean the cheapest Rolex out there, even the Air King now is probably 5 or 6 grand. So
Yeah. At
it's
least.
different when your cheapest watch is $100 and your cheapest one is 5 or 6 grand. I
Yeah.
grant you that for sure. But I think if you can really step back and appreciate Seiko, anyone that likes Grand Seiko should like Seiko. And
Oh
we
yeah.
just told you why.
And
Because
I
most of the
think
stuff that
that's
Grand Seiko
their.
is known for is
Yeah.
it came from Seiko. Like the
Yeah.
technology and the design, it came from Seiko. So they're
Hmm.
they're not incapable of doing this
Do
this
you
high.
think that's why they split off more? I mean, they might have a
Yeah,
official story that's different, but that's why they split off Grand Seiko because they knew, hey, we're known for this, and we're never going to be able to run with the big dogs of Omega and Rolex and all without splitting off and doing our own thing. Because Seiko, for better or for worse, and I think is for better for most people because most of their market is in that, like I said, $200 to $800 watch range. Most of their market's going to be there, and so they couldn't
yeah.
stay under Seiko's wing and still justify a $10,000 watch. I feel like,
Yeah, no, I think that's like really accurate, or really accurate assessment of that because while they were doing things like inventing the spring drive and then putting that
yeah,
primarily into the Grand Seiko lineups, like they were still inventing and creating and sort of driving the Grand Seiko line. But yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. Seiko, if I had to guess, and I didn't research this specifically, so it might be out
mm,
there, but if I had to just guess, they probably were looking at the Grand Seiko line and saying, "Hey, this is doing pretty well."
mm-hmm,
But yeah, if we want to compete against Breitling and Omega and Rolex and anyone else that plays in European,
mm-hmm,
German and Swiss markets specifically, then we probably need to separate them so that the Grand Seiko people can go do what it is that they do best,
yeah,
and they can focus entirely on it. They can market it. They can make more models so that people have $2,500 quartz models and they have $25,000 limited edition 1 of 100 models that are full
mm-hmm,
gold.
mm-hmm,
And I think that's why they did that was specifically so that Grand Seiko could focus on playing there. They
yeah,
dropped Seiko from the dial. Grand Seiko operates as its own entity. They have their own factory. So yeah, Seiko is capable. The Seiko brand is capable of all of these high horology things in my
mm-hmm,
mind. And that's why I would have no problem rocking a $300 Seiko diver on my wrist. And
oh
I
yeah,
think that's why a lot of people that own a lot of Rolexes and Breitlings own and still wear their Seikos. But
yeah,
yeah, I think that, yeah, Grand Seiko, that probably just had to be made in order for Grand Seiko to be where they are today. And
flourish,
maybe if they were
yeah,
still under
and really
Seiko and
hit
they
the
were still.
American market. That
Exactly.
because the
Yeah.
American market is the market that's probably has the most stigma against Seiko, meaning, hey, we only buy Swiss watches over here, blah blah blah.
Yep.
So I think to really take over the American market like they're trying to do, and I think successfully starting to do, they had to, like you said, stand out on their own.
Yep. Yep. I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they stayed under one entity, I don't know that Grand Seiko would be in all of these retailers over here today. And I don't think that
Hmm.
we would hold them as such in such regard. I think you
Yeah.
would still need to be a pretty big like watch nerd if
Yeah.
Grand Seiko was still under Seiko to appreciate them. Now that they're on their own, there's just the clear distinguishment. I think it's worked out for the best. So,
Yeah.
yep.
All right. Well, let's kind of step off into our first watch that we're going to talk about today. Um, I wanted to pick out a collection that to me just was broad strokes, mass appealing to the audience just to start out. Because as we know, and I think Brett picked two very, not out there, but cooler, more intricate watches. So I kind of wanted to just start by like, hey, you might see a lot of these in retailers. You might see a lot of these on people's wrists, maybe even a lot of women's wrists for this standard of collection, but it is their essentials collection. Okay, so this covers very simplistic, like Seiko's version of an OP, or even like gives off kind of Aquaterra vibes. If you know what those watches look like, you can kind of get a picture here. If you're not watching on video or anything, these collections for the most part, they do have some intricate chronographs on here, but these collections are just more simplistic. They're in steel, stainless steel, titanium, even some yellow and rose gold accented watches, but, very kind of dressier watches. And we'll talk about another dress class collection of Seikos, but to me, this is kind of just very, imagine OP, imagine Aquaterra, imagine those type of vibes, just nothing crazy, but very classic, very beautiful. I really like these watches. They also offer a lot of square and rectangle watches that we'll talk about, but case thickness, kind of stepping off in here, case thickness is around 12 millimeters, depending from 11 to 13, but mostly around 11 to 12, I would say. Water
Is
resistance of
is this
30
on a
meters.
is this on a specific watch under the Essentials collection?
This is just for the most part all of them. I went through about
Okay.
10 different watches, and
Oh, okay.
pretty much all of them are around 12 millimeters.
Okay.
So again, you can talk about, let's just, if we want to step off specifically, their essential Sir 525 is a beautiful stainless steel watch with kind of a teal turquoise dial. Very slick hands that honestly the hour hands here kind of remind me of a Grand Seiko Skyflake, very rigid, sharp hour and minute hands. All of these watches are going to run in quartz movements for the most part, which power reserve is quartz, which is good. So your power reserve here, you don't really have to worry about, for years down the road.
Yeah.
They also have their Seiko 10 bar, which is their Sur 503, which is kind of steps off a little bit out there with a green dial or a black dial variation. But this is cool because it almost has like, imagine a racetrack under these minute or hour markers. Okay, so you have like a green or a black solid dial in the center, and then two rings that run under the hour markers, which I think is really cool and kind of just makes it different. All of these are on like an oyster type
Yeah.
bracelet. You can also do
Now I
NATO
see the
straps.
Aquaterra. Okay,
Yeah,
now I see. Okay,
yeah.
very cool.
You kind of see the variation kind of looks a little more
Hmm.
similar to that type
And
of
then yeah, and then the Sur 525 you're talking about. Yeah, I see. Yeah, the handset is yeah, it's like the
mhm.
sword handset on the Grand Seiko for sure. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's very
definitely.
cool.
I think that, again, being variations of each other at some point, I think really lends to that. And I think gives it a very high quality look. If you scroll down, we're looking on their website right now. So if you're just listening and you want to look on their website, see exactly, they have a ton of variation on different watches. And all of these watches, you're talking probably starting 225 and going up to, around 300-400. So again, very high quality builds, looks very nice. My favorite watch, honestly, of all of this collection is their Sur 456, which or their Sur 450, which just men's and women's different watch. It is on a
Mm,
brown leather strap with a gold accented case and a champagne dial. Okay, so you have your loom, which again pops there, and it also has a day date function, which a lot of Seikos are kind of known for, having the day right next to the date. So it's like Monday 6th or Tuesday 7th for their day date versus where a lot of watch brands like Rolex and all will have their day function above the 12. So kind of nice. A lot of people are starting to go towards this. I feel like a lot of different brands that don't have a set day date area that they're known for just yet. But I think this watch, again, these are all, think about Aquaterra, think about OPs. Then you can keep scrolling down on their website, and they also give off some Movado modernistic vibes at
yeah.
the bottom. There's Sir 483, Sir 485. All of those watches, very simplistic dials, very small hour ticks, markers on. I wouldn't even say markers; they're more like ticks. And almost kind of from afar, you could think, that kind of looks like, Movado is known for not having any hour markers. They just have the 12. The I don't even
It
think
is
it's a
very
diamond. I don't know what it would be.
it is
But
very futuristic. It's
yeah,
like
very
it's almost
futuristic.
like it's a little pinstriping, for like where
Yeah.
the yeah, that's pretty cool. And just to clarify, so when David's saying Sir, that's SUR on the reference number. Because similar
Yeah.
to Grand Seiko, there's not names to these watches like Oyster Perpetual. They're all going to be reference
Mhm.
numbered. Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly. And then honestly, a lot of their women's watches here give off Tissot vibes to me, in my opinion. They have the raised dial indentation. I think Brett, your wife, actually has a Tissot that looks kind of like these, just under the Sir collection.
Hmm.
Raised dial, kind of two tone. They do rose gold, they do stainless steel. Really just it's nice because they cover anything you would like. You would pretty much be able to find a style that fits your liking um, within this collection. And then even stepping off for their last collection option they offer, and to me is their kind of I wouldn't say copycat, but their version of a tank, their
Yeah.
Seiko tank look. It looks, very good. It's kind of like their look-alike collection. They do these on a few different watch I guess brands you could say. But these to me are kind of the epitome of starter watches, the simplistic but reliable and multi-purpose looks that are hard to beat for a first watch. These watches can be dressed up, dressed down, and are known that, and that they will perform for years to come, unlike other micro brands that we kind of discussed at the beginning of this episode. And again, there's such a variation on different materials, from champagne dials to black dials to green dials to blue dials to silver dials. You have pretty much anything you want. I still think that champagne Sir 450 watch is beautiful, and coming in at $250. I mean, it's a great dress up watch that you could keep in your collection if you're going out.
Was there any essential collection watches that are automatic? Or are they all quartz?
I believe they're all quartz.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. All the
from my research, there's normally with Seiko, they're all quartz unless they say otherwise.
yeah.
And
Was that
everything I clicked on have said quartz, and I don't
okay?
see anything that says differently.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the watch on the site, it's always got a caliber number, but it doesn't specify quartz or not. I think unless it
Hmm.
just says automatic or
Yeah,
manual winding capability, I guess it's going to be quartz. But
yeah. All of their watches I've clicked on, it has their caliber 6N53, which if you see that is quartz. That's their most famous quartz caliber watch.
yeah, and I'm looking at the tank sort of look like the SWR 052 under the Essentials collection. That's the
Hmm.
caliber 4N30, but looks
Hmm.
like quartz as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, to your point, they kind of have a little bit of everything under that collection.
Hmm.
Like David was saying, if you're looking for kind of a straight up, sports watch, dress up, dress down type thing, think like a Date Just, or think, I know that Grand Seiko have, obviously that's probably the more comparable comparison than like a
Yeah.
Date Just, but again, reference numbers, and I don't know those off the top of my head, so I'm sure that Seiko's got some, but just date window, the tank,
Hmm.
and then yeah, like you talked about the women's watches, the kind of two-tone bracelet, white dial design. So there
Yeah.
is there's definitely something for everybody in there. There's even some at the very top when you look under the essentials. There's even some Cartier Santos esque
Yeah.
square dial. So
Yeah.
not the rectangle tank looking, but the more square Santos style. So truly is a little bit of everything there.
Yeah, it kind of covers it all again, and you have your titanium. If you lean that direction, you have titanium casing. It's funny to me. I think I was telling Brett about this, but it's funny to me. The only complaint, a lot of these, all these watches will have reviews on them, and pretty much most of them have had at least 10 reviews on each. And it's funny how a lot of these watches will be, they're gold, say they have gold accents or gold watches, and the only complaint on it will be, oh man, this is so much heavier than I thought. And I'm like, well, that's kind of the point of a gold watch, is you actually know, as a high quality watch, gold is always heavier, whether you're wearing a solid 18 karat yellow gold Submariner or Day Date, whatever Rolex, is much heavier than a stainless steel Submariner, just say.
So much
And so
heavier.
it's funny how, like, these people, I'm sure they'll get their starter watch and then maybe get their second watch being a gold watch, and they're like, God, so much different than the original watch I got. But I think, to me, that's a sign that, hey, there actually is good quality here on a lot of their even gold accented watches. They won't say obviously 18 karat gold, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be for that price, but gold accented watches still have some weight to them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I like it. Yeah, and we'll kind of go back to that top of the episode mailbag question. The
Mm-hmm.
question, how does it hold up? I would probably venture a guess that the Essentials collection is going to be a little bit under in terms of value than what you would or should expect from the likes of a Tissot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I know we say Tissot all the time. Longines is going to be a little bit more pricey than Tissot. What other
Yeah. I
like
mean,
similar? Yeah,
Citizen. A lot of Citizens are in this price point, but Citizen also is Citizen. To me, I feel we haven't covered them yet, but I know a lot of people that they have a cult following.
yeah.
They make watches that are in this price point. They make watches that are in Seiko's big price points, and they
Okay.
do a lot of cool things. If you go to a Citizen dealer, there's a few of them around where I live, and I mean, they just eat them up, like Maris does with Grand Seiko.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool things Citizen does, but yeah, I think Tissot, Bulova, these guys, Citizen. I'm trying to think anybody else. What's another
I know.
micro? Yeah,
I'm sure
Longines
they're
would be
like
higher
obvious,
quality. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll think about. We'll edit another one in here
Yeah.
if we need to.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, because like all the ones that I'm thinking that would be entry, I can't think of any that are
Well,
like under
Victorinox
1,000.
is another one that's really good. Their quartz watches,
Victorinox,
they're
yeah.
really good brand. Victorinox, they're around 300 to 600
I'm thinking
normally.
like Formex and like
Yeah,
Monta, but like those are going to be higher. Like,
those are
those
micro,
are
yeah,
over a
higher.
grand. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
micro brand over 1,000.
yeah,
Trying to think like mass
sub 1,000. Yeah,
sub 1,000, but yeah, we'll come. I'm sure it'll come to us before the end of the
yeah,
episode.
yeah.
Cool. Well, let's go ahead and move on. We're about 50 minutes in here. Can you guys believe it? It took us 15 episodes to go 50 minutes, no edits. Yeah, baby. So the first watch I want to talk about today, um, kind of flipping the script because usually David sticks to the dive watches, but I kind of stole those from you.
Yeah.
The first one I want to talk about today is in the Prospex collection. So this is going to be the Prospex Diver SRP F03. Very completely unique and interesting design. I really like the design of this watch. It's there's no ripoff, there's no copycat. This is total
Yeah.
uniqueness from Seiko. Only gripe about it, it's a little chunky. So we're gonna be stainless steel model here, 43.8 millimeter case diameter. So again, I don't like big watches, so it's unfortunate because I love the way that this watch looks. 13.4 millimeter case thickness. It's a little thick, but it's nothing too crazy. Water resistant here to 200 meters, and this is going to have the Seiko manufacturer caliber 4R35, beating at 21,600 beats per hour, which I believe is 3 hertz. I believe 4 hertz is 28.8, and then 5 hertz is 36,000, which is the high beat. We are learning, people. Power reserve of 41 hours on this particular caliber and model. And then the cost here is the most attractive thing about it, honestly, to me. $525 US. So you're getting an in-house manufacturer caliber movement here, 200 meters of water resistance. You're getting a dive watch. You're getting a unique watch that people aren't going to say you've ripped off ABC brand. And it's one of, if not the most affordable Prospex model. I'm going to the Prospex collection right now on their website, but the Prospex lineup, again, for those, if you're not super familiar with Seiko, this is going to be where you start to see like the higher end price points from Seiko arise. They're pretty hard to find under 1,000. Like I'm looking now, and 595, 950, 895. That's kind of going to be the cheapest. And you've got several options there, so I shouldn't say that it's like one of the only ones. You've got several options there. And actually, it's looking more like under 1,000 is going to be more popular. But the Prospex model or lineup, hold on, I just completely whiffed on that. I thought the Prospex was a little bit higher. Let me just restart that. So the Prospex lineup,
yourself.
I know, right? So the Prospex model or lineup rather, it's going to be a little bit of a step up from the Essentials collection. It's going to offer a lot of different complications here. This is where you're going to get into a lot of tool watches. You're going to see plenty of divers here, plenty of sort of historically designed divers from Seiko. Seiko's of the the 70s and the 80s when they were sort of entering those dive watches for the first time and coming up with 600 meter water resistant watches. A lot of chronographs in this model as well. A few GMTs, I believe, but we've got like Panda dials here that are again, these are unique watches specific to Seiko. There's no ripoff here. But this particular one that I'm talking about, again, $525, excellent looking diver, 200 meters of water resistance, very unique. I love the waffle texturing on the dial too. And the bezel is also a little bit different on this. This is a dive bezel, so we've all seen those. But they do a kind of a unique thing from the 0 to 15 minute counter. That's where a lot of divers, let's use the Rolex Submariner, the most popular dive watch in the world, use that for example. Your 0 to 15 minute track is usually going to be marked by several ticks, and then from minute 16 up to 60, you're usually just going to have a 20, 30, 40, 50, and the pip at the top. So this one actually replaces all of the numerals with just ticks, and it's also gray, so it's a different color. It's gray from the rest of the black bezel. You do have a luminescent pip on the top of it, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I really like this dive watch. What do you think about it from like a design perspective though?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely out there, kind of crazy, or you know, design. I'm just scrolling through their Prospex line right now because I know a bunch of these, but man, there are some wild ones out there. Have you seen the SRPE 39 collection of theirs? It is a dive watch just like you're talking about, but
Oh
the
yeah,
dial has manta rays. It looks like it's like a blue with manta ray or stingrays, whatever you want to call them.
I'm
I don't
not
know the
lying to
difference.
you when I
Yeah,
say that I wanted to go buy one of these this week. The reason that I
it's
didn't
crazy.
is because they're huge. It's because they're
Yeah,
huge, and that's
yeah,
my big gripe. The one with the
yeah.
manta rays, that's a 45 millimeter diver.
Well, I guess you got to have a dang four manta rays on your dial.
I mean,
It's
it's
crazy.
cool. I think it's quirky and it's
Yeah, I mean,
fun.
it's something that you never would hardly wear, but God, when you do, that is a watch that I would sit on my, and it's an automatic that I would
Yeah.
sit on my, watch spinner and just show people when they came to my house. Be like, yeah, I don't really wear this, but this is freaking awesome.
Oh, I would
And
wear
then,
that. That would
yeah,
become the beater right there. Like a $500 diver, but it's got
yeah,
manta rays. Like you can wear it
yeah,
out and you can get, people would probably appreciate it and like maybe ask you
yeah.
about it because it's
Oh
a
yeah,
gradient blue dial.
crazy.
So it's
Yeah.
also gradient
They
when you
also
get
do it in a
closer.
navy too. You can do a
Yep.
light blue to make it pop, which I think I would do, or you can do the navy blue, which blends in the man or the stingrays, whatever. I don't know the
Hmm.
difference again, but the stingrays.
Well,
um, yeah,
it's the dimensions to me, but it's also on that particular one, the SRPE 39. And I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but on that
yeah.
one, it's also the case design. I don't like I think the turtle is kind of what it's
No,
affectionately known
yeah,
as, the
yeah.
turtle shell case design. I really don't like
That's what
that.
honestly I think about when I think of half of Seiko's divers. I think is this design
Hmm.
kind of more out there. I know they do different ones, and there's probably one I'd like better. But when I think of like a Seiko diver, I'm thinking in the design of their SR. I guess the SRP collection, which SRPE, SRPF, SRPH, all of those are kind of a little more bulky, like you said.
Yep.
But they're cool, they're different, and they stand out. And if I'm gonna buy, another dive watch that maybe isn't at a brand that people think again as luxury, you're going to buy something that's different like this. I would probably not buy a Seiko dive watch that was just plain Jane black or
Hmm.
blue even, and just plain Jane. I would get something like this and really get your money's worth because like you said, you're in 625 for the one with the manta rays with the light blue, 600 for the navy blue manta ray one. If you want the one that looks like granite, almost like an orangish brown granite, that's
Yeah.
750. You're kind of getting a crazy dial for a great value there.
Do me a favor real quick. I want to just get your like live thoughts, and if you're listening and you want to follow along on this and you want to head to the Grand Seiko website, take a look. David, I want you to scroll down to there's a row of watches, and the watch that I'm talking about on the podcast right now, the Prospex SRP F03 is on this row on the far right. When you scroll down, on the far left, though, you'll get the SRPE33. So that's a manta ray dial, but it's been packaged in the case of the watch that I like. So
SRPE 33. Ah,
it's effectively the same watch that I'm
yeah,
talking about,
yeah.
with the black waffle dial and
Oh
the
yeah.
bezel was removed. It's the same case,
It's
but they
more
put the manta ray
smooth
dial there.
outside bezel. The case is much more smooth and
Hmm.
jagged almost. Kind of
And you
this gives off big time Grand Seiko vibes with just the casing and all. Like obviously the
yeah,
manta rays is very
yeah.
Seiko esque, but
And you shed
very
1 millimeter. I know it's not a lot, but you do shed a millimeter.
heck yeah,
And for what I think is a way better looking case, like there's
yeah,
hands down, almost objectively to me, that turtle case doesn't
yeah.
hold a candle to this one. And
Yeah, I never even saw this one. Yeah, I like this one even more.
yeah, yeah,
I'm with you on that.
and it doesn't have the date. I think it's odd. Some of the Prospex models that have a day date
Yeah,
complication with the magnified glass.
yeah.
I don't love when
It's
when
almost
brands
too
other than
big.
Rolex
Yeah.
do the magnified glass. I really don't. That's a
Mhm.
very specific thing to Rolex, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And it just looks real tacky on the ones with the day date complication for Seiko. But this one, it's
Just
just
with
a
the
date.
date.
It's just
Yeah.
the Cyclops lens. It's a cool watch,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
very
it.
cool. I like this one. Yeah, like you said, the outside. I'm trying to scroll back and forth. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the jagged, rigid edges on that one more than, like you said, just the turtle
Yeah,
shell where it's
that
almost like an oval.
yes, yeah, the turtle shell is more ovular. Is
Yeah,
that a word?
it
Ovular?
is now.
Okay, it is now. Merriam-Webster's word of the year, ovular. Um, it's more ovular in shape. This one, the SRPE 33, and then the
It
one
looks just more like
that
a
I was talking
dive
about.
watch.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you what the case reminds me of. It reminds me of the bamboo. You know, the
Yeah.
bamboo is very
Yeah.
jagged. It's very rough cut, like hard cut
Exactly.
edges. That's what it reminds me of. So
Yeah,
the
the Grand
case,
Seiko bamboo is what
yep,
we're talking
the
about.
case reminds me of a Grand Seiko, and the
Yeah.
dial just to me is just kind of classic Seiko.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, it's a badass watch. I mean,
Grand
I'm
Seiko
telling
is
you, I
known
wanted
more
to go
for.
get one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're
Do you,
just
do
they're
you
too
like
big.
do you like the manta ray?
I do. I
I
mean,
do
look, you know
too.
me.
Yeah.
Look, you know
Yeah.
me. Hey, I posted a picture to our Instagram last night where me wearing a blue and green tie-dye beanie. All right. Like I like some
Hmm.
out there colors. All right. I like some
That would have
pastel
matched
stuff.
perfectly.
Sometimes we all know that. And
Yeah.
then sometimes it needs to take a back seat. I'm going through my Stephen A voice right now. But
Exactly.
yeah, no, I like the manta rays. I think it's cool. I think it's very unique. That's my
I mean,
thoughts on it.
I like that. I really, I knew you were doing this, so I didn't even really scroll through it. I scrolled through the top, and I like a lot of their chronographs. They have one that looks kind of like the Panda. That's probably the only watch in this entire collection that I would say looks similar to any other watches. They have chronographs that are like black and white, like the Rolex Panda, and then they have like the ice blue chronograph.
Mm,
But other than that, I mean, all of this is just very Seiko
yeah.
driven. Scroll
What?
down before we move on here. Scroll down two levels on the far right. There's the SRPG 59. That's another kind of different one. It looks like is that like penguin tracks on it? It's like an ice blue dial. With like
Oh,
I don't know what kind of
what
tracks
is
those are.
that?
Like turkey tracks, I would say the
They
redneck
look
in
like
me,
deer
but
tracks or
yeah,
like
like
yeah.
some weird track, but it's like
No, it's
icy. So I'm like,
penguin.
well, maybe it's
That's what it
penguins.
says.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna
says
say it's penguin.
gradient. This is from the Seiko website. Gradient dye stamped dial, which is similar to what
Okay.
Grand Seiko do,
Yeah.
evoking the whites and blues of light reflecting off Antarctic ice and the patterns of penguin footprints in the snow.
Look at that. I
That
think
is,
that's another cool one. Kind of not more my style. Almost looks
it's
kind of like a girl style. I don't know how big it is though. It probably is pretty big.
it's 43.2, so
43.
it's actually smaller. It's the bracelet or the band rather on it that makes it look a little bit more like a women's because it's a very
Yeah.
thin,
Thin,
like a
thin. Yeah.
rubber type of
Yeah.
a bracelet. But the
And
dials,
honestly, I like
I don't
these
know.
rubbers that they have. Uh, sorry.
Oh boy, we're off the rails.
I
We're
like
not.
the rubber straps that they have.
Did you
I
say
like
rubber
these rubber.
breast straps?
These
I'm
rubbers are
just
mighty
messing
fine.
with
Very, very comfortable rubbers.
you.
I like these rubber bracelets that are straps that they have here, kind of with some indentions in it. It gives it a little more character,
Yeah.
and especially for a watch of these price points that you would think it'd be something just thrown on there that you could forget about. But again, yeah, these are very cool watches. I think Brett's probably going over both of their most popular just watches when it comes to just style and kind of out there difference. What I was thinking about this while you were talking about, if you're saying, "Hey, I'm buying a Seiko," or your first ever watch, just say your first watch you probably want is something like an essentials, like I was talking about, just simplistic, kind of get you a day to day watch, right? And then
Hmm.
you're like, okay, your next watch, well, I'd like a diver because everybody wants a diver. Diver's the most popular watch out there in the world because I'm sure of Submariner. So then, but you like Seiko. So boom, you say you have a Seiko dealer 10 minutes from your house, you're always going to buy a Seiko. I would probably buy one of their Prospex. And
Yeah.
then the next one that I think I would buy, and you can correct me if you're wrong here, is going to be one of their more popular models, their Presage, which is what I'm going to talk about today.
Yep.
These dials, this is more of a dress watch. We'll talk about their dress watches. This is very dressy. Their dials give off, to me, the closest to Grand Seiko that you can do with Seiko, very indented, very, sunburst dials,
Yep.
beautiful, beautiful makes. And I think this would be a great third watch to get of Seiko, for your dress. So then you have your everyday, your diver, and a really good dress watch. These are probably the most famous watches out on on social media right now. Every time I get on Instagram or Facebook or anything, I'll see one of these ice, blue Presage watches that are always sold out, which I'm looking on their website at the moment, and I can confirm they are once again sold out.
Yeah, the ice
I
blue.
mean,
Yeah,
these dials, I think, to me, are just stunning when it comes to again, the price point. You're getting close to what you can imagine a Grand Seiko would be, but for a price point of $450. I'm
hmm
sitting here at this navy blue. The SRP B41 is on a stainless steel bracelet, kind of a different, not just a plain Jane oyster bracelet. It's more closer to probably a Jubilee or like a Breitling, I would say, style bracelet. But you have a navy blue dial with a sunburst center that's, starts out at very light blue and bursts out into dark blue. And it's an automatic watch. You're talking 21,600 beats per hour. Very good. 50 meters of water resistance. I'm sorry. Caliber movement is their 4R35, which again is their automatic. You're going to be around 41 hours power reserve, which I think is pretty standard for watch, this price and caliber. Even honestly, a lot of older Rolexes are right at 41 hours. So I
a
think
lot of
that's
more
very good.
expensive
Yeah.
still are giving us 40, and it sucks.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
exactly.
Monta
So I think being
Noble,
at
I hate.
41 hours, I think you're really good. You're over a day there, so you don't have to worry about it. Just you got to worry about 2 days sitting somewhere. But your
Yeah,
cost variation is from about 300 to 700, rounding off. But the majority of the great looking sunburst dials that you'll see and know the Presage 4 is going to be right around that 4 to 450 mark. I think their ice dials here or yeah, they're if you go ice, they're about 525, and like this one is kind
the
of
sold out one.
yeah, this one is actually isn't sold out. The sold out one, I think they took off the website for right now. They have the girls version, which is sold out. I'm trying to see here, but yeah, they have just a plain, like very light blue dial that doesn't have the ridges in it that Presage is known for. For 525, that's their SRP F53. Beautiful. It has the date window at the 6 o'clock hour, fully automatic again gives off Grand Seiko vibes. You're talking a beautiful dial, beautiful hour and minute hands. Plus you got the so you have silver hour minute hands, silver hour ticker or markers, and then your second hand is a blue, just like the Grand
Yeah.
Seiko Skyflake, the Grand Seiko Snowflake. So it really stands out from the hour and minute hands, which I think is really cool.
Do you like the brown one? It's got like rose gold markers on it and a brown dial. And I'm reading here, it says dial is gradient gray / brown dial with pressed pattern and gloss finish inspired by the Irish coffee cocktail.
Is that
Because
the SRPJ17?
yep,
Yeah,
because
I was just
don't
reading
forget
that.
this is the
Yeah.
Presage Cocktail Time, and
Mhm.
just reading there on the site, inspired by the vibrant elegance of the exciting cocktail lounges in
Yeah,
today's Tokyo.
it
So
is. It gives off kind of that those old cigar lounges, cocktail lounges
yep,
of like the 80s, 90s, I guess you could say.
yep,
Yeah, very brown, but I think the rose gold really pops with that brown. And if you look closely at the dial, it again has textured dials,
yep,
which I
yeah.
mean,
I
again,
think
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah, and I was gonna say I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. You get a taste of Grand Seiko design
Hmm.
for a tenth of the cost.
If not less,
Like
with how expensive Grand Seikos are now.
yeah. Some of the new ones are starting to get up there. So yeah, a tenth or more of the cost of that,
Yeah.
and you can scratch the itch.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're looking for a dress watch, then and you're considering Seiko, the Presage is extremely popular.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those you probably have heard of it unless you've been living under a rock. So super popular. I've
And a
kind
lot
of
of people, you've probably seen them. You might not know what it is, but once you go
yep,
online and look what they actually are, once you'll start noticing them all over Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, any of those.
yep.
I've started noticing since the research.
Yeah, yeah. If you follow anyone on online, Twitter and Instagram that are watch people, you should be seeing some of this stuff get posted. And there's a mall kind of close to my house that they sell Seiko, and there's a specific store that we need to run over there to
Hmm.
every now and then. And I've stopped in several times to look at the Presage selection. They've only, and it's ironic that you're saying it's sold out. The only ones that I've ever even seen there have been those light blue dials,
Really?
and I've tried them on and I was really turned off by them, but only I think because the light blue, it gets really close to like a silvery dial. And
Yeah.
when you combine that really bright and light coloring of the dial
Yeah.
with some of that Zaratsu-esque polishing that you'll
Hmm.
see somewhat on Seiko, you'll definitely see it on Grand Seiko.
Yeah.
But when you combine the two, it's just so shimmery and shiny. I didn't like it as much, and I think that's why just looking now is kind of drawn to this brown one. But
Yeah, that's very,
yeah,
very, very pretty. Again, it's
yeah,
a little bit lighter than you would think, maybe like a Skyflake on Grand Seiko, where it does kind of give off those vibes of, it can be light blue or white from afar, but these are almost just like icy. Where
yeah,
Grand Seiko's just has a little more blue in it. The only thing I wanted to bring up here, there's 40 millimeters for most of their men's, and it's 33 for women's, which I felt like was kind of big for a women's size watch because you normally don't see over like 31. Most
yeah.
women's are like 28 to 31 nowadays. But anyways, just something to keep in mind. Again, why you want to try on all of these watches in person and maybe not buy them online unless you just don't care
Yeah, definitely.
and
I mean,
can't do it. Yeah.
yeah, run to, I mean, Macy's. Like Macy's is the
Hmm.
store that carry them here, and I'm sure there's a lot of like department type stores that sell Seikos. But
Yeah.
yeah, run to a store that sells them, and yeah, check them out. They are again very popular. They're very nice. This is coming from again like manufacturer Seiko in house automatic movement, and you get the texturing. I mean, that's what Grand Seiko is known for, man. I mean, if you're,
Yeah.
like if you don't have the budget for a Grand Seiko, like you've got options.
Oh yeah,
Whether
definitely.
it's a manta ray diver or circular striations on a cocktail time, like you've got options for around
Yeah.
$400 or $500. Yep.
Yeah. Now let's move on to what I feel like this watch that Brett's about to talk about here is one of the more watches I see a lot on social media as well. I see the
Yep.
Presage, or I see this, and especially the orange and orange dial, black bezel that I think we have pictured here. This watch always pops up on my feed, and I think it competes. They don't look similar per se. I'm not gonna say Seiko's copying them in any way because I think it looks very different. But this competes to me of like when Breitling came out with their Super Ocean watches, that were all about where it's surfing, where it's dinner that night. Very summer watches. These watches very well compete with that again for a much better price point. You
Yeah.
can wear it out, surfing, beaching, or to a beach bar. It's very summer style watches. A lot of these colors are stark, orange, yellow, whatever it is. I'm
Yep.
sure they have some darker colors, but this is a very beautiful sporty watch, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very popular one. It's the Seiko 5 Sport SRPD
Hmm.
59. So this is the orange dial variation of the Seiko 5 Sport dive watch. To
Hmm.
David's point, they do have I'm not there on the website, but off the top of my head, they do have a navy
Yep.
diver. They have a black diver, the orange, of course.
They have a
Um,
yellow, they have a green. I'm
okay.
I'm on the
Oh
website right
yeah,
now. They have a
green
green that
with the green
honestly looks
bezel.
kind of, it's the same green that I would think a Hulk kind of looks
Yeah.
like.
It's very
Yeah.
similar. It's not too dark, it's not too light, and that
Yep.
one has a green bezel, whereas
Yep.
the orange has a black bezel, the blue is a blue bezel, the black is I think I just said that, yeah, black and black, blue and blue, orange and black, and then green and green. So
Yep.
the green one, if you are a fan of the Hulk,
Yeah.
and you're looking for a diver, again, like
And they're
we can't
automatic too.
exactly, we can't say it much more, like $325 in-house
Hmm.
automatic movement, and you've got colors to play with.
Yeah.
Um,
Their yellow is, it kind of gives off, again, if anybody's familiar with Breitling used to have
mhm.
a yellow dial watch that
They
was
still
very
do.
popular. Yeah.
Yep.
And this gives off their old version of it. They modified it, made it more modern looking about probably 4 or 5 years ago or so. But
Yep.
it's the rowing blazers. It looks very, very cool. But that's a little bit more expensive, about $500.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 5 Sport SRPD 59 again. Going to jump into some specs here. So stainless steel, like most of them that we'll see, 42.5 millimeter diameter. So this is getting down to like mass appeal, right? This is getting down to where we would
Yeah.
expect a modern day diver to live. It's still on the bigger side. If that was 41.5, I think we could call this a perfect entry level dive watch, but it's a little bit on the big side for me, just my personal preference. Case thickness again is going to be 13.4 millimeters, and I believe the same Seiko movement, the 4R36 is going to be in this one as the Prospex models that, or at least the model that I specifically spoke about just a moment ago. So again, 13.4 millimeter on the case thickness, which is perfectly fine for a diver. 100 meters of water resistance, a little bit light, but it's a $300 watch, people. Again, I believe 3 hertz, 21,600 beats per minute. Again, 41-hour power reserve, a little bit low, but again, $300. So 325 with a little bit of variation. I can't really tell the rhyme or the reason, but some slight variation. But
yeah, and a lot of their variation too is like their GMTs are more expensive.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So
yeah, if you like their GMTs, they're going to be around 475.
Because they basically have almost the same models in a diver and a GMT.
And their GMTs again have the two-tone bezels, which a lot of people like. Is very cool.
Two-tone bezel. So yeah, 325. But yeah, like we talked about kind of at the top of this is a very popular watch from Seiko, if not the most popular. It's one that if you're big into like watch Twitter or watch Instagram, you're going to see this a lot. I see it on a lot of wrist. I know a lot of people that have this. I tried to get a Seiko on my wrist for preparation for this episode. I kind of waited just too late, just had a very busy week and just waited too late to ask. But whenever I did ask, got a lot of receptive people that were willing to loan me one of their Seikos, and a lot of people had several. One guy said, hey, I've got 5. Which one are you looking at? Another good listener since day one, Tick Love, we see you out there. He offered, he's got 2 or 3 that he was looking at, a blue and I think a black dial. So again, people like these watches and they've got many of them. And a lot of people have this orange dial, which is why I chose it specifically. So I kind of already said it, but I think you get a very appropriate amount of watch for the money, considering that this is going to be less than $400 after taxes without a discount. And you still get the same power reserve, water resistance as watches that can be 4 or 5x the cost, right? Like we never left that realm. You can still go find a $1,500 or $2,500 watch that's going to have, maybe you'll get 150 meters, an extra 50 meters of water resistance, but we're talking very comparable for a fourth or a fifth of the cost. The only knock here to me would just be the movement and its accuracy. I know it's 3 hertz, and that's going to be the case with most of Seiko's. And that's not even a knock for me personally. I'm just saying that that's probably the only knock here that anyone could really make.
Fine.
Yeah. Is that because that's going to be the accuracy, or it's going to lend itself to some of the accuracy things as well. So when you're talking about like a COSC certified movement, which I believe, top of my head, +3 to -5 seconds per day. So we're going to be outside of that range unless you are a watchmaker, can find a watchmaker to maybe regulate some things for you. But that's it. It's mass appealing. It's unique to the Seiko collection. They're not ripping anybody off. They've been making divers that have looked like this since the 70s. They still look like this. The handsets are the same. The markers are the same. The crown positioning, which is at the 4 o'clock position, that's still there. Oyster style case. And then, like we already talked about, you've got green and green, black and black, blue and blue, orange and black. You've got GMT variations of this same watch, clean symmetrical dial, rotating bezel. All good things. And again, I think that you get a lot of watch for the money here. Probably why so many people have one.
Yeah. I was actually just scrolling through again while you were talking. There are 2 that I want to point out that people might be interested in. If you like the Omega Seamaster S&P 300, that we saw it at a Atlanta Watch Society meeting. Remember that blacked out one that had black everything on it?
Wait, which one?
Like the first one we went to, the Atlanta Watch Society meeting.
Yeah, but what watch you say was blacked out?
The S&P 300.
Oh, yeah. With the black markers too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seiko has something that's kind of similar to that, all blacked out, very cool dive watches. They're SRPD79. As you scroll down, you can kind of see it. Again, this one's on a NATO strap. I don't know if they offer it in any other strap, but just a cool watch. If you want to look at if you like that, but you only want to pay $360 versus $6,000 or whatever it is, $10,000 even for that one probably. Again, automatic watch, another cool, just something you could keep in mind if you've seen those Omegas and thought they were very
Well,
Cool.
and also, yeah, I mean, to that same point, if that's your style, they've got, I mean, they have this again, the same watch, and I didn't really see it, but I am looking at it right now. They have the same watch with a black dial and black bezel, on a black stainless steel bracelet. So, and
Hmm.
that one has like the light hour markers and also white numerals on the dive bezel. So if you know of the S&P ceramic that we're talking about, it's not
Yeah.
legible for shit. You
No,
can't read that thing.
it's just for
You would
looks.
you would have to UV it and then turn the lights off to tell the time on it. The
Hmm.
Tudor Black Bay ceramic, they do a good job of it because they have the markers that
Yeah,
are not black. They are just, luminescent
that
painted, and they're
helps.
kind of that color. Exactly. So
Yeah.
this one takes it a little bit of a step further with white indices and markings on the dive bezel. So they even have that for you if you're into an all black. I see the one that you're talking about now though, which
Yeah.
is basically the same watch. They've just removed the white marks
Yeah.
from the bezel, and they've painted over. It looks like the hour markers. So
Yeah, they also have that in a blue dial right next to it there that's, kind of more like an S&P 300 blue if you like that as well. Just want to go check. Obviously, they're not
hmm
similar, but they're in that realm that hey, if you're looking for a watch that's kind of like that, but you don't want to pay that money, that's a great
yeah.
option for you guys. Also scrolling down, I see they have it sold out, but they have a turquoise watch just like we were talking about with the orange and black bezel. This is a light blue. I wouldn't say baby blue, but lighter blue with a black bezel down at the very bottom of their page, which is the SRPK 33. Sold out right now, but $325. So
Mm,
if you could keep an eye on that, if you
there
were
it is.
still in
Yeah.
that phase of wanting a blue watch like that,
Yeah.
looks pretty cool. And
The
then they have
moral
their
of this.
version of the Black Submariner if you want it right next to it, which is the SRPK 29.
Well, let me see oh yeah,
It's
there you
right
go.
next to the dirt. Yeah, there you
Okay.
go. So if you
Yep.
want something similar to the Black Submariner, there you go, $325 as well.
Yep.
And it
It's
has a
right there.
date and it has a day function that the sub does not have.
True.
And it's
True.
not magnified.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and
So
it's not cyclopsed, which to me that
yeah.
just there's something about that rectangular because it doesn't have like the soft edges like the Rolex Cyclops has got kind
Yeah.
of soft like teardrop sort of
Hmm.
shaped edges to it, and the rectangular one on the Date 8 Seiko version, it's too like 90-degree angled cut. It just looks kind of silly. But the moral of the story from me here is go to the Seiko website because
Yeah.
like
They
again
have a ton.
a lot of these brands we don't know a whole lot about before we do research. And
Yeah.
so when you get into it, you just have to remember like these are $300 watches. So I'm not mad that they're ripping someone
Hmm.
off
No.
because they've been around for 150
They
something
have
years.
so much of their own.
Yeah.
They have, hey, we have 70 watches that are our own style. We have 5 watches that look similar. And honestly, those 5 watches can work great for a lot of people that don't want to pay the money. I mean, that turquoise
Yeah.
watch right there, if you don't want to pay the money, that blacked out S&P 300 looking watch looks freaking awesome
Yeah.
compared to, but it's not 10 grand. It's
Yeah.
$360. I mean, shoot, and again, that I would be way more apt to buy that watch versus the Omega one if, not caring about brands aside, just because I'm like, I don't want to pay 10 grand for a watch I can't freaking read.
Exactly. And if you
I'd
buy
pay
that
300,
watch,
I'd pay $400 for a watch I can't read, but not 10 grand.
yeah, and if you buy that Omega and you don't like it, now you're forced to sell it.
Yeah.
And
And you're
one
going
of
to
the
lose money.
yeah, and something we said on the TISO episode talking about first watches, that's the beauty of these cheap brands is that
Hmm.
if you buy it and you don't like it, you've only lost $400. You haven't
Yeah.
lost 8 or 12 grand on a sub or 10 grand on like a ceramic S&P or 5 on a
Yeah.
ceramic Black Bay 58. You lost 300 to $500. Like big deal. You had a
Yeah.
watch. You can still sell it for probably around the same cost. Like,
Yeah.
let's be real. You can sell this $400 Prospex for probably 250 or $300. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I'm not mad at it because I see more of what I see from Seiko is not that they've copied other watches.
Hmm.
They've copied colors
Yeah.
and things like that. Their divers are Seiko unique. They just said like, okay, the black dial sub is really popular. Let's just make a black dial a black dial Seiko 5 Sport.
Yeah.
Some of the turquoise stuff, right? They followed suit just like everybody else did. So I don't. Again, like to your point, they have enough of their own stuff. I don't see now one of them. I'll be honest, right? Like we can all be honest here. One of them is blatant. The tank is like a lot of
Yeah.
people just don't do that. Everyone has
Yeah.
a diver. I mean, and we talked about on Rolex, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If it looks too much like a sub, it's a knockoff. If it doesn't, it's ugly. We've talked about that at length. The tank, though, that's the one. It's like, all right, not a lot of people do that.
Honestly, I don't care. Maybe it's just because a lot of those tanks are. I don't know. Never mind. I'm not gonna say nothing. No.
Okay. I mean, but it's your podcast.
I mean,
say it if you want.
I'm just, a lot of those tanks are, maybe something, your tanks are bought, we buy for a wife or something, and maybe the wife doesn't give a crap about a watch brand, but she likes that style. Boom, you can buy a Seiko tank and be done with it.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely not a terrible thing to copy the tank. I mean,
they're capture the audience.
Yeah, their black sub, looking watch definitely looks like it to an extent, but really, other than those two, there's none that are just like blatant copies. I mean, obviously their black diver watch isn't exactly like the sub. Like the tank is, their version of the tank is exactly
it's
like
identical. Yeah, it's identical.
From afar, these guys definitely have some that can, but there's really only, out of the 1,000 watches they make, there's maybe 3 or 4 that I would pick out and be like, okay, that blatantly looks like something else.
Exactly. Because aside from the coloring, they didn't really copy it. It's like I sent you the one a few days ago, and I was like, damn, this is a pretty cool watch. And you were like, yeah, it's similar to like one of the Yacht Masters. I think that's what they did. They just looked at some really popular watches, and they're like, okay, what did they like? How did they pair
same color dial, same color second
the bezel, the bezel and the dial? Like, how did they kind of pair that up? We're going to take a watch that we've been making for 50 plus years, and we're just going to put the same color, the same colorway on it. So, but yeah, back to the initial point, my moral here, go check it out. They've got a little bit of something for everybody. And then again, everyone probably lives within 30 miles of a Macy's or a 30-minute drive. So next time you're at Macy's, doing whatever at a mall, going to see a movie, pop in, throw one on the wrist, see if you like it.
Yeah.
There you go. Simple as that. Anything else on the Seiko 5, or you want to jump in? We have one more mailbag question.
Yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I have to say on that one.
Cool. Well, did it again. Failed to list who asked this. So, okay. This is from our friend Nexus. Nexus on Instagram. He asked, what do you think about Seiko using a mineral crystal in their models, such as the Presage? I'll take a stab at this first. It's not evident on the website whether, or maybe it is, but we just haven't looked for it specifically. But I didn't find it evident that they distinguish mineral versus sapphire. I think maybe some of them, I'm now recalling, like, I feel like I've seen them say sapphire on a few of them. But the point is that it's kind of like the automatic thing. They don't make it evident that it's quartz or that it's mineral. Maybe they just make it evident that it's automatic.
They normally
sapphire.
make it. Yeah, they normally only make it evident if it's the nicer version.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I really have one thing to really say about that is like, do your research on it. You're buying a Seiko, and if you're buying a cheap Seiko, I'm expecting it not to have the sapphire. If I'm buying a $6,000 version of the Seiko, then okay, I'm gonna make sure that thing has a dang sapphire.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah. So I mean, that's really all I got to say about that. They got to sound like Forrest Gump. That's all I had to say about that right there.
Europeans are scratching their head again. I don't know. That's a popular movie.
That's a pretty good one.
If you guys haven't seen Forrest Gump, then I don't know what you're doing.
You should see it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's really just do your research and don't expect a freaking sapphire crystal on a lot of those cheaper watches. And maybe there is, maybe they offer them on some, but I would just like their $250 gold accented champagne watch with a brown leather strap. There's no way that's going to be an automatic for $250, and I know that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I'm similarly right there with you. It's like, on the one hand, I want all my watches to have a sapphire crystal for sure, but on the other hand, a Seiko Presage, we just talked, it's like $400, people. Like, again, beggars can't be choosers. If you are, if you're choosing to spend only $400, or if you are restricted to only spending $400, in either case, you have to take it for what it's worth, right? $400, sadly, today is just not a whole lot of money. I mean, it's. I'm not saying it's no money, but in the world of
watchmaking,
in the world of mechanical watches, like $400 is not a whole lot of money. So be happy that you're getting an automatic, I think, and that you're getting 100 plus meters of water resistance on a lot of the tool watches. So yeah, that's kind of my my thought about it. I think that you should go into this brand with that in mind. If you want to take a step up from a Presage to a Seiko diver that's $3,000, then you're probably not going to have anything to complain about. But again, that's a $3,000 watch. It's not that it's Seiko's fault that they're not putting sapphire crystals in. It's that you're paying for a $400 watch.
Yeah.
So again,
and it'll
I don't
give you
hold
something
them.
to look forward to down the road. You can't get it all in your first swing. My first watch was a freaking Fossil. It's in my car. I found my old Fossil first watch at my parents' house, and I'm gonna put it up here in the office. But I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. It's funny. It's a completely black watch, black bracelet and everything, and it's a moon phase, like a moon phase watch. And during the day, it has like this little sun animation, and during the night, it has moon and stars. And that thing don't work anymore. And it was very simplistic, basic, but you got to start somewhere. And you're starting a lot better than that $50 Fossil watch I bought if you're buying one of these.
Yeah, if this is your first watch, people, and you're buying or something from a company that's 150 plus years old, and you're getting like in-house automatic calibers, mineral glass is not the worst thing that could happen. So,
all right, well,
that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, cool. I mean, I think that's the whole episode on Seiko. If you have any questions about it, definitely let us know. This is another big brand that I'm sure down the road we'll definitely be doing a part two as well. Just because they always come out and innovate and do different things. So maybe sometime next year we'll take another stab at this one. And so if you have anything in the meantime you want to let us know. But don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, like our podcast on Spotify, Apple Music. Again, it's free. Just do it. Helps us out a lot more than it, struggles you to hit the like button. So if y'all could do it, we greatly appreciate it. And don't forget to use the code strap and link 15 on for Strap Habit, 15% off your Strap Habit straps on straphabit.com. And again, they're great quality. We both have a couple of them, and they're just great straps to kind of throw on there during the summer. Maybe get you a NATO if that's your style, or a leather or anything like that, just to keep in the background. They're a great price. You're not breaking the bank to get a cheaper strap on there. And I promise you it'll be worth the money that you spend.
I was gonna say, I don't think that I said that was the code strap and link 15 earlier. My apologies. And to David's point, they don't break the bank. That's the best part. You can buy 2 of them for the cost of one other and get 2 different styles. I tiptoed into a leather watch from them. And it's still on my Grand Seiko today. So I have left that white grayish leather.
It really shows you how much other places can rip you off. Places when you get ones like this, you're like, the other ones might be a little bit, they might do this a little bit better, but God, if I can get this for a third of the price of some of these other places, you're like, my gosh, they're really making a bank on these, because they all come from the same, Singapore, Taiwan, they all come from the same freaking factory,
rubber factories.
One costs you 30 cents more, but they're going to charge you $80 more. Whatever.
Now, if you're bespoke, if you're cutting the leather and making it like as I requested it, I'll pay you $250 for that. But
most of the other ones, I mean, we have. I know I don't
want to
call out brands. Rubber Bee. Okay, or we're calling out brands. Rubber Bee. I've had some Deluxe, things like that. I mean, they all come from freaking. Literally, this one I believe comes from somewhere over there, Taiwan, Singapore. I know Deluxe, the one I bought, shipped from Singapore. They're all coming from the same area.
Which
so
Deluxe?
The value of them, being made is not much different. But my Deluxe, I paid $300 for, and then I paid $40 for one of these at Strap Habit, and I like them both equally. So,
which Deluxe do you have, or which watch did you get for a Deluxe strap?
It was actually, I bought it for my dad's birthday this year. He got it for his Grand Seiko that he has. That's the same one as you. He bought this white kind of croc. It's like a white croc leather Deluxe. Looks cool, very cool. Just $300 freaking dollars. I was like, okay, come on.
Right.
There's no way the markup should be 4 or 5 times what it is for a Strap Habit. That sure, it's croc leather versus what Strap Habits is, but again, $300 versus $35 is wild.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I'm not a
anyways,
leather expert, but
yeah,
yeah, point is you can get several, and the quick release spring bars on there.
yeah,
It's just nice to have. You don't have to break out tools and stuff. And once you accumulate 2 or 3 straps, of course, unfortunately for me, I have like different lug sizes across all my watches,
of
so
course,
that's
yeah.
tough. But once you get 1 or 2, 3, 4 straps, you can start popping those like on and off in a literal matter of like 30 or 45 seconds.
Hmm.
No tools required. So that's, to me, that's my favorite part.
Yeah,
Um, cool
very
guys.
cool.
Well, thanks again for rocking with us. Really hope that you enjoyed the Seiko episode. I feel like we covered a lot, so I hope that this was informative. Yeah, like David said, give us a follow. Shoot us a DM. We'd love to hear from you guys. We're gonna do. We're probably gonna select our own brand next, and then maybe
Hmm.
we'll kick it back over to the Instagram listeners for like a listener poll and vote for the brand afterwards. So that'll be, yeah, I guess in like October. And then yeah, headed to the Netherlands later this year. So we'll get some cool stuff, some cool pictures and stories and everything
Hmm.
like that in the upcoming episodes. So I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks again. Hope you all have a great day. And guess what? Week 1 of the college football season today. So everyone enjoy it. We're gonna go enjoy it right now. See ya.
Rest in peace, Jimmy Buffett.